Hey, what's up? Welcome back, guys. So I have another easy lesson for you today. This is going to be basically the next lesson after we reviewed simplifying perfect squares. Well, here's why, guys. We're going to be talking about factoring the difference of two squares. Now, this is super simple, and what I love about this lesson is it's always on the math regents. All right. So basically, what we do is if you just read through these steps and follow each step, you will always get this question right when it comes up. And basically, real quick, what you do is the first step says to set up two sets of parentheses when you're factoring perfect squares. Your minus sign will always go to the right. We'll talk about what that means. It's very simple. The plus sign will always go to the left. And then finally, guys, all you have to do, like in the previous lesson we just did, is find the square root of each perfect square and you just bring them down. Simple. That's all it is. Now, the one thing about this lesson, especially when it comes up on a Regents, and I threw just an easy Regents question on the bottom, and we'll see more Regents questions with this tomorrow. This is basically just an intro lesson. But one thing you must recognize, because the Regents will not tell you that you're going to factor the difference of two squares, or they won't say factor the perfect squares. You have to know you're looking at perfect squares. And here's how you know. You're looking at perfect square binomials. Remember, a binomial has two terms. Here's the first term, here's the second term. And those terms always, always, always have a minus sign in between them. That's how you know you have a perfect square binomial. If you have a plus sign in here, it's not a perfect square binomial and it cannot be factored. All right? So, now that we know what we're looking for when we talk about perfect square binomials, all right, let's factor it and let's see how easy this is. So you have a squared minus 4. The first step says set up two sets of parentheses. So I'm literally going to draw two sets of parentheses. Then it says minus sign always goes to the right parentheses. So you put your minus sign into the right parenthesis. Always. That's never going to change when you're factoring perfect square binomials. Plus sign always goes to the left parenthesis or in the first. No problem. It's always going to be plus minus when you factor these. Now, all you need to do is find the square root of a squared, and we just did that in the previous lesson. The square root of a squared is a times a, right? A is the square root of that. Now find the square root of 4. Square root of 4 is 2. What we do to the first binomial, we always do, or the first parenthesis, we always put in the second, always. So it's a plus 2 times a minus 2. That is it. You're done. You move on to the next question. It's simple. Let's look at another one. C squared minus 100. There's two terms. You have a minus sign in between. This is a perfect square binomial. So factor it. Two sets of parentheses. Minus sign always to the right. First sign's always a plus. Last step, find the square root of each term. What's the square root of c squared? We talked about that. That's c. And the reason why, because c times c is c squared. Now what's the square root of 100? The square root of 100 is 10. And what we put here, we always put here as well. And why do we do that? Because 10 times 10 is 100. Now, don't forget, if you forget what the square root is, go to your calculator, you hit second function, x squared, and you'll get the square root you need. Simple. Next, notice for this one, they put the number first and they put the variable r squared second. No problem. That's how you're going to factor it, but you still go through the same exact steps. Two sets of parentheses. Do not change the order of the information they give you. Minus sign goes to the right always. First sign's always a plus. Square root of 16. Now be very careful here. A lot of students, especially I see it on the Regents all the time when I grade them, a lot of students will say the square root of 16 is 8 because, 8 is half of 16. But guys, that's not the square root of 16. The square root of 16 is 4. So 4 here and 4 here because 4 times 4 is 16. Square root of r squared is r. What we put here, we also put here because r times r is r squared. Next. Okay. You have a perfect square binomial. You have two terms. You have a minus in between. You're ready to factor. Two sets of parentheses. Minus sign always to the right. First sign's always a plus. Now remember, x to the fourth The square root is x squared and x squared. And why was that? Because x squared times x squared is x to the fourth. Remember, just take your exponent, divide it by 2, and you'll always get it. Square root of 64 is 8. So x squared plus 8 times x squared minus 8. Next, 2 sets of parentheses because we have a perfect square binomial that we're going to factor. Minus sign always to the right. First sign's always a plus. Square root of x squared is x. We've seen that a million times now. Now, let's say you're looking at 400 and you don't know. You forgot what it is. Guys, don't guess. Go to your calculator. Just put in the calculator. Second function, x squared. Notice the square root symbol or the radican comes up. You put in 400 and you hit enter. What's the square root of 400? If you didn't know it, it gives it to you. It's 20. Simple. So we put 20 in. Here and here. And why do we put it in both terms? Because 20 times 20 is 400. Next, perfect square binomial. You have 2 terms. You have a minus sign in between, so you could factor it as perfect square binomials. No problem. 2 sets of parentheses. Minus always to the right. And there's a reason why I draw this line, guys. When we factor trinomials, that's going to come in handy for us as well. So I like to get you in the habit of it. Now, this minus sign goes to the right. First sign's always a plus. Now you have the number with the variable here, 100x squared. No problem. You can find the square root of that. The square root of 100 is 10. And the square root of x squared is x. So it's 10x. And then it's 10x over here. And why is that? Because 10x times 10x is 100x squared. Now you do 81y squared. No problem. The square root of 81 is 9. And the square root of y squared is y. What we do to the first binomial, or the first parenthesis, we do to the second always, because 9y times 9y is 81y squared. And that's it. Now, these down here, you're probably not going to see that on a Regents, but I like to have you practice them just in case. They're usually not that large. Doesn't matter though. Go through the steps, you'll always get it right. Minus sign to the right, first sign's a plus. Square root of 25r squared s squared is 5r s. And of course, what we put in the first set of parentheses, we always put in the second when you're factoring perfect squares. Always, these numbers are always the same because 5rs times 5rs is 25r squared s squared. Now you factor this. Square root. Square root of 9 is 3. Square root of m squared is m. And the square root of n squared is n. 3mn here as well. And that's it, guys. There's no more to do. Next, 2 sets of parentheses. Still a binomial with a minus sign in between. Minus sign to the right. First sign is a plus. Square root of x to the fourth is x squared, right? Remember, just divide the exponent by 2. 4 divided by 2 is 2. It will always work. Square root of y to the eighth is y to the fourth. Remember, 8 divided by 2 is 4. That's how I get that. And then, of course, we put that in the second set of parentheses always. Whoops, I don't know what the heck happened there. I think my finger hit it while I was writing. Okay, square root of 144 is 12. A to the 6th is a to the third, and of course b to the 10th is b to the 5th. Same thing here. 12. A to the third, whoops, and b to the 5th. Sorry, hard to write with this. And that's it. Now, this is an example. This is the last one, guys. And this is so easy, it's insane. Now, it says, notice, here it is on the Regents right here. It's a perfect example of a part 1 question on the Regents, or it could be also a part 2. It says, what is the factored form of, and they give you 16x squared minus 81y to the 6th. Notice they did not say factor the perfect square or factor the difference of 2 squares. They will not do that. You have to now look at this and know, oh, okay, I'm looking at a perfect square binomial because there's 2 terms. They're all perfect squares, and there's a minus sign in between. Once you know that, bang, you go right to the rules that I just taught you. First step, 2 sets of parentheses always. If you don't have two sets of parentheses, it's wrong. Minus sign to the right. First sign's a plus, and then just get your square root. Square root of 16x squared is 4x. And the square root of 81y to the 6th is 9y to the 3rd. 9y to the 3rd. And guys, that is it. That's factoring the difference of two squares or factoring perfect squares. Tomorrow we will look at this all Regents questions so you can see exactly how the Regents will throw these at you. And when it comes up on the Regents, guys, I guarantee you, you will absolutely get it correct. Any questions for me, please email me. My email is in the description below. Please download the calculator to your computer if you have not done so. That is also in the description below. You could also follow the lesson and the worksheets. They are also in the description below. Comment below on what you liked, what you didn't like, or maybe what you would like to see. Please subscribe, like, and share. And as always, guys, thank you for watching. Please, you and your families, your friends, stay safe. And I will see you guys on the next lesson.